Awesome.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the HBCU Masterclass. I think just me being one of the student co-hosts, I'm Brandy Merriweather. This is an honor. I think everyone on this call is really known for a lot. Even just introducing them is going to be extremely hard. So I said I'd do just as much as I could and just say their title, what they're working on currently, so they can kind of elaborate a little bit more. To start off, we have Shirley, who's going to be our moderator. She's known for really doing a lot of journalism in the music industry, recently working with Power 106. Shirley, you can go into a little bit more depth about yourself once we get started, but you guys, she is awesome, and she is a person you have to know if you are working in the music industry. Then I'll go into Mr. KP, head of music at I Am Other. I think I was introduced about him this year at One Music Fest, brought out every single artist, pretty much. He's known for a lot in the music industry, and he's also definitely someone everyone needs to know. Mr. Courtney Lowery is known for being Future's publicist and just working a lot in this industry constantly, consistently. Mr. Courtney has CL Media. So you guys follow him on Instagram when we hop off of this, because he's definitely one to know and be connected with. Miss Phylicia Fant, I think she is the definition of Black girl magic. I've seen her a little bit of everywhere, constantly working, constantly representing us African-American HBCU students. She attended Spelman. And so she is the co-head of urban music at Columbia Records. And then we have Mr. Rich Isaacson, who is the GM and EVP of Def Jam Records. He's an OG. So if you guys want to follow him, connect with him on LinkedIn, I think that's an opportunity to really know more about the industry, just watching how he moves. And then last but not least, Mr. Jason Jeter, who is a music entrepreneur, co-founder of Aku and co-founder of Hustle Gang. I've ran into him a few times working with Hannah King, and this guy's work ethic is amazing. He does a lot. And I honestly wouldn't have a lot of jobs had he not hired some of the people I work for. So, yeah. So thank you guys. Like I said, ask your questions in the Q&A box, and Shirley, take it over.
Thanks. All right. Well, first question for everyone, I guess. What steps did you guys take in your career to become a president, a GM, or VP of a major industry organization? So first.
Phylicia's actually, I guess that'll be Rich. You're the most current.
That would be you. Yeah. Come on, KP. Yeah. Like, we wouldn't be here without you, honestly. So you should start.
There we go. This one. So I guess the first steps was just focusing in on a craft to be good at first, like to be good at something, to be good enough to be noticed at that thing, and that was for me DJing at first. And the journey started there, but always took those basically the things that it takes to be a good DJ. I took those into trying to be a good executive, whether it's noticing what keeps people moving, whether it's knowing when to transition, knowing what people to mix together. I just took that and tried to DJ that to the goal.
That's crazy. I feel like DJing is a great place to start because you know your music.
It helps.
It helps, yes. I think, of course, I'm a publicist by trade. That will always be part of my DNA. That's how I started most of my internships. But as far as growth within the corporate structure, I think it's about finding the whole. Sometimes you have to connect the dots, and when you are willing to connect the dots and kind of, I guess, go outside of the norm to figure out how you can be of value, that helps you to elevate. So I think I took a risk and said I want to do more than publicity. I think there are more things that make up me and more things that I think the label could benefit from. And so that led to my current role at Columbia.
Awesome. I love it.
I guess I'll go next. To me, I guess I'm a little different from the standpoint of I've been independent my entire career, so I think.
Which makes you a CEO.
Without a doubt, which makes me, sure, a CEO, founder, investor, all of that, right? And more than anything, I think it definitely starts off with educating yourself, right? Creating, a foundation of knowledge to really understand like what you're good at, or what you want to do, what you don't want to really do, what you may not be good at, and also, of course, as an entrepreneur, as an independent person, specifically in the entertainment space, you have to always figure out ways to reinvent yourself, so that's something that's very key as well. And just staying in tune with, I feel like, what you're doing in the landscape of the industry, the business overall.
Definitely.
I know we're talking to predominantly college students, and I remember right when I was at where most of you guys are, and if they're, somewhere who are graduating, but I remember graduating, senior year graduating, and still didn't know what I wanted to do. And one day I stumbled upon a MTV taping, and I knew that is what I wanted to do, but I felt like, and I want to choose my words correctly, because I didn't waste 4 years at school, because some of the great friends and relationships I have to this day, which are totally outside of my major, which is psychology, but some of the great connections I made were at, in HBCU, but I had to figure it out. How do I get from, okay, I just went to school for 4 years for something complete, and I realized literally 1 week after I graduated, this is not what I want to do. So I had to find my way and piece it together, something I was totally unfamiliar with. So obviously, if you're passionate about something, you donate your time. So donated my time and my energy to Sony Music as an intern, worked my way up from there. And also, one thing that is very key is relationships in this business, whether it be on your colleagues and executive side, but also on the artist and talent side. And a part of my reinvention has been growing with the artists that I have been afforded to work with. And so as they matriculated, so did I. And here we are today with me and my own firm, rocking with those who I happen to grow with. So relationships are definitely key, whether they be on the your artist side or on the colleague side and executive side. So 2 key things right there.
One more thing I want to add. Also, I feel like, based on the audience that we're talking to, like you said, internship, right? Like, like figuring out ways to build authentic relationships and truly add value is so important. You know what I mean? And it's funny looking at KP. KP was very instrumental in giving me an opportunity to build my career, So I think that so often people really kind of run up on people and, yo, can I listen? Whereas, like, no matter what, if you're focused on your craft, it's like having tunnel vision. So it's like really figure out a way to build a relationship with someone. And now as you're developing that relationship, you get all the opportunities to try out your different ideas, opinions, whatever that is, through building a relationship and not just thinking that you're going to run up on someone and get something out of it, So I think that's very important,
I agree. Relationships are key. Rich, you want to go next?
Yeah, well, I was picking up on some things that Courtney said. You're not wasting your time just because you haven't figured out what you want to do for the rest of your life after a few years in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And by the time I was in, my 3rd year of college, I decided I was going to go to law school because I figured that would be, give me a craft that would give me some job security, because I knew I had nothing to fall back on. I didn't have, I had to provide for myself. So I went to law school, and I had no idea I was going to be in entertainment. I was always fascinated with entertainment and drawn to it, and I always loved music. And because I went to law school, and because I was, I was a very hard worker, I was lucky that my childhood friend was in the music business, Steve Rifkin, and he used to come and stay in my apartment when I was in law school, when I was a lawyer and I graduated law school. I hated every second of my job after law school. I worked 80 hours a week in a big corporate firm. I hated it. And he used to stay on my couch when he'd come to New York, and he got a little production deal. And when we were kids, we used to kind of like joke about, we're going to be in business one day. And he came, and I came home one night, and he's like, yo, I got a deal. Let's do this. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. not giving up my law career to do this, because it just seemed like a fantasy. And then, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I hate what I'm doing. I'm young. What's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? I got to take a chance. And I remember being terrified, telling my father, who never went to college, and he was like a kind of a blue collar guy who built his own business from the ground up. And I knew how proud he was that I was a lawyer. And here I am now, I'm about to tell him, like, I'm giving it up to go into this crazy business that I can't even explain. But I did it. I had the courage to do it. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but there's a lot of picking up on a lot of things that everybody else was saying. You're never wasting your time, because what you can find out is that what you don't want to do, but by spending those 4 years doing something or not having a plan, then you take a shot on something. If it doesn't work out, then say, okay, I didn't waste my time. I know I don't want to do that, and I'll find something out about myself that I didn't know before. Also, you have to realize nobody owes you anything once you get out there. You have to make yourself invaluable to somebody. You have to connect with somebody, and you have to form a relationship with somebody. And those are the key things as a young person coming out of school. Even if you could take an internship and you're not going to make any money, and it's something that you're really interested in, wait tables at night, to make sure you're making money, or bartend, or be a barista, or do something. Because what the most important thing when you're coming out of school, and especially in this environment where none of us have faced anything like that, you just have to find out what you're passionate about. And when you figure out what you're passionate about, you'll find a way to make a living from it. I promise you, it works out. But you just got to stick to it, because that's the most important thing, is finding that thing that gets you excited, and that's what should drive you. Because there will be a way to figure out how to get to make a living out of it, and you will do it because you have to, because you love what you're doing, and that's the most important thing.
Definitely. I think that's an important point that you bring up, just the fact that everyone's path is different, and to not compare it, because it's just not linear. But I guess, what would you guys say are your top 5 secrets to entrepreneurial success?
Top 5? That will take a minute. I know one, though, is just run toward the truth. Like, whatever truly excites you and whatever truly moves you, go toward it. Even when it doesn't make sense sometimes to a lot of people, you just have to actually follow that gut. Like, that's that guiding, like that North Star thing that we all have. And it's really like the shortest distance to the place that you're supposed to be.
I would say you can't be afraid to take a risk. Now there's different there's levels to this, but obviously, you want to take an educated risk. You don't want to just kind of hop out there 100% blind. But you have to be able to take a risk. One of the things that I personally live by, I can't live with a what if, or any type of regrets. If I have a what if, I wonder what would have happened if I would have done this, or I wonder what would have happened if I've done that. If I know that's going to come up, then I have to go after it, and that's in layman's terms. Sometimes you have to trust your gut, and believe in yourself, and and you have to not just believe, but you have to know that no one is going to work harder than you. You have to have a very strong work ethic, and you have to know that, and you have to believe and live in the space that no one is going to work harder than me. And if you got that, then you're ready.
Yeah, I would, of course, piggyback. I don't know if there's 5, but I feel like the one that stands out for me the most is being authentic to myself. When I decided to show up as me all the time, I think that things just started to work out. I think if you don't present yourself the way you want to and believe in who you are at all times, it just won't work. So the best thing for me is to have been myself all the time, and to speak out the way I feel something should be, knowing that there could be backlash, and everything I'm saying is not always correct. You will not have always the luck of having the right idea, but if you don't speak out on something that's on your heart, I think to what Courtney said, it's hard to sleep at night when you don't live by your own truth. So I think that has been the best thing for me.
I think just following up with you, like you said, just truth. I think that that's like, first it starts with passion, you know, like being passionate about it. You know, like we said, everyone's story is different. And I think in the space of business that we're in, you know, as music, entertainment, entrepreneurs, it's always easy for someone to look and say, I want to do that. That looks sexy. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, that's what internships and things of that nature really truly give you the opportunity to really see if that's really for you or you're really cut out for this. But I think that we all know that the amount of hours that you put into something is endless. So if you're not passionate about it, it just doesn't make sense. The value doesn't equate. It doesn't add up for real. You know what I'm saying? When you look at, you know, how much money do I make an hour, you know, for all of the hours that I'm putting in, it's like, damn, it's not really a lot, you know? So I think it starts with a place of passion, which really is about educating yourself and doing the proper research, you know? And then I think as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to like put things out there and not sit on it too much, not overthink it, you know, but, you know, really put it out there, make the adjustments as you go along. Of course, you want to research in advance, but you want to hurry up and get to market. You know, as the guy from LinkedIn says, if your first output of a new company is perfect, you waited too long, you know? So to me, it's like the whole idea of like, hey, hurry up and fail, know when to pivot and things, as well as balancing for entrepreneur. We all know that you have to balance your money as well. You know, if you're truly an entrepreneur, you got to 1099. Now you got to balance your tax money versus your salary versus your reinvestment money. So, you know, that's something that a lot of people don't talk to, but a lot of people also run into trouble because they don't really handle their funds, their money the right way. And that's something that's very critical as entrepreneurs.
Definitely.
I would say the key thing, there's the few key things. Execute. You know, you have to be passionate. You have to provide value to people as an entrepreneur, right? But you have to execute. You can talk all you want, but it doesn't mean anything. Your ideas are only as good as your execution. And you have to think, why is somebody going to pay me for this idea? Why is somebody going to pay me for this service? And then once you figure out why, then you got to demonstrate how. And you can't ever take the why or the how for granted, because everything is word of mouth. Everything, it's a circle. It's relationships, word of mouth. Somebody hires you, somebody pays you, they're going to talk to somebody else, and the quality people who are offering value and execute, their business grows. Those are the key things in my experience.
Definitely. Thank you guys for sharing. During this pandemic, a lot of people have lost their creative drive. What advice would you give creatives on how to stay creative during these times?
Good
question. That's tricky, because I think creativity is personal to the person doing it. You have to find a place in you that gives you that space to create, because I think right now, so many people are hearing, if you don't come out of this pandemic with a new skill, if you sleep, you're losing, and all this stuff. It's like, this is the most confusing time in the world. Like, some of that advice just doesn't make sense.
Right.
You got to find a place that's peaceful for you, or whatever it is that causes your creative. Because some people create great out of this chaos. Like, there's gonna be some amazing music that comes from this. It's gonna be amazing art and TV, because people are in their heads with their most honest thoughts. But you have to be comfortable to let them out. And I think that's the thing that goes back to Jason. Don't be scared in it. I mean, it's a scary time, but if you're thinking it may be important. Like that thought may be your gift to the world at the time. So, you know, if you're creative, let it out.
Definitely.
Just to piggyback off of that, I try to find a silver lining in everything. So obviously, we're living in history right now. This will be stuff that our ancestors will, and people that come after us will talk about. But I'm also cognizant, that I work in a creative business. So I'm looking, and when you in the music business, and entertainment business, it's forever evolving, right? So during this time, I'm actually attracted towards the things that are arising, and what's coming about during this time. And like you said, KP, people channel creativity from different places. And I know that there are a multitude of creatives out there right now that are creating, new things and new platforms and new music or whatever it is that is deriving because of the times that we're living in, because of now. Those are the things that I'm attracted to, whether it be just to kind of give you guys some examples, whether it be, D-Nice kind of stepping out, and entertaining the world and doing his thing with Club Quarantine, whether it's been, a versus thing with Swiss Beats and Timberland, giving new opportunities and new ways to, those are the types of things that you will start to see arise from that. And I think that's just the beginning. I think multitudes of things are going to start popping up, but that is the benefit of working in a creative industry. All these people, whether we're, behind the scenes working with them or creators, as some of you guys here are, those are the things that I'm looking to see what comes about, because that's what a creative's job is, to either you're creating yourself or you're helping to execute the vision of a creative. So, I'm embracing it and looking at the silver lining in all of this, because when we look back on this, we're going to see, well, this wasn't here beforehand. And I also believe that some of the things that are created during this time will live after this, so this is all history, in the making, I feel.
Yeah. No, to me, I agree 1,000,000%. I feel like isolation breeds to the best innovation. You look at creatives and artists, be it Kanye West retreating to Hawaii and creating this great album, right, that just lives forever. Edgar Allan Poe and those guys back in the day, when you read these stories about people writing books, right, that have will last forever, they've always kind of isolated themselves and went to the cabin and wrote, or, 90 days or whatever that is, Hemingway, all these people. So when you look at the positives out of it, it's like, if you're quiet enough, if you kind of tap in to certain levels of yourself, like through this time, it should really lead to, incredible things, or it can lead to incredible things. I agree with what you said, KP, like everyone's creativity is different, but in general, like peace, quiet, isolation can lead to great things,
Yeah. I think there's
like I was gonna add. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Faye.
Go ahead.
On the D-Nice and the verses kind of stuff, right? The thing that I think people keep leaving out, and they were doing what they were doing already. Like they were like Swiss. They started something that was honest and authentic. D-Nice was DJing because that's what he does. Like, and when people see you do something honest, that you can't fight that kind of that energy, especially in a time where people need something. So it's like, just be honest to you. Like, don't do the, okay, now this person won doing this, let me try it. Do something that's specific to you, and it'll probably be that much easier to focus on and grow.
Right. I really wanted to use the word you used, which was honesty, but also just being vulnerable. I think this is a time where people can be the most vulnerable ever, and risk can be taken without, I don't think, as much scrutiny. So I think if you are afraid, this is the time to really just say, it's okay to kind of like take whatever guard off, pull all the layers back and just be as real as honest as possible. I think that's what a lot of artists that are winning, even to the point of what KP said, people already doing it, or what, Courtney said, what's happening is because they said, what, I still have to be really vulnerable right now to go live by myself. You know what I'm saying? And to think that this isolation moment is something that other people want to see. But I think what's really real is that people want to see you the way they see themselves right now. And we're all isolated. We're all vulnerable. We're all trying to figure this out. So there's so many things that can come out of that really raw, vulnerable space. So don't be afraid to be your true self right now, and show all your parts.
Definitely. To that point, have you guys ever had an idea that you've been scared to share, but that idea ended up taking you to the next level?
All of them.
That's the stuff that I have to say on OnlyFans accounts. I'm just kidding. I get that. That's private. That's when you really have to go there. There's always that moment where you just want to fight, I think, but that's when you really become yourself. When you really say, I can't take it anymore. when you decide to tell yourself what you really deserve, that's when you really unleash all the fear, and you say, I can do this, and you stop letting all those other things that are really just fear and illusional take your mind over, and say, I'm worthy of growth, I'm worthy of experiences, I'm worthy of all these challenges, and I can handle it. So I don't want to be too specific about the moment that it happened, but I felt it. I remember sitting in my office and saying, this is enough, and just leaving and getting in the car and driving around the lot and all the way home and listening to Waka Flocka and turning up really, really loud and saying, this is it. I am moving on. I don't know how, when, or where, but this is time for me to make the decision to put myself first. Thank you, Waka
Yeah, I
Flocka.
think mine, what's funny is looking at Jason, I know exactly what mine was. I was at Arista, and I was mastering the Big Boy Andre Presents album, and I got a call that threw me off. And I remember going like, man, is this the sign? And I walked back to the office, talked to my LA Reed, who was my boss at the time, and told him I just felt like it was time. And I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea what the next thing was. I just knew that I had hit this place. And it was probably the most comfortable place I was at the time. I had Ghetto Vision, T.I. We had T.I. about to start moving, or we were trying to get it moving. And in that moment, realizing that we weren't going to have the ability to move the way we wanted to, put me in that place where I was like, oh, I got to have my own space to do this. And it gave me the courage to just say, you know, fuck it. Like, just let me jump out here and see what's there for me. And 5 minutes out of the office, I was walking to Sony to become head of urban or something at that time. But I wasn't, but I had no clue. I had no plan on it. Had never thought of life after Arista or outside of LaFace, because all of that was new to me as well. But those moments where when you hear it, you gotta deal with it.
Man, as an entrepreneur, I think it's like you said, all of them, and that's the reality, right? It's when you're comfortable, growth doesn't happen, right? So you have to really, you have to put it on the line, and those are the ones that win, right? The basketball player that's not afraid to take that game-winning shot, knowing that, hey, if I miss the shot, it looks like it's on me. But if I make the shot, so it's something in you. Basically, you have to be fearless for real, right? As an artist, as an executive, as an entrepreneur, because every day, you literally eat what you kill, So to me, also understanding that the best ideas are different, that's really what change occurs. If I say something and, yeah, I heard that before, that's cool, but the best ideas, people may not understand them when you first say them, because that's really when you have something that is really kind of disruptive, so to say, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be very, very clear and very transparent to this audience. These moments come at different times and different phases in people's career. And specifically mine came as recent as 6 months ago. Literally at a place where it's like, okay, I've been doing this for so long, and we work in a business that's ever changing. And I forget, I'm not sure who said it. I'm not sure if Rich or someone, but you have to make sure that what you're doing holds value, and that you're changing with the way things are changing. But I also believe in being ahead of the curve too. And within your own space, leading the pack, if you will, always strive to be the best. And it comes a time where if you keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results. Sometimes in order for you to grow, you have to be a little uncomfortable. And so it was time for me to take a risk. But obviously, there's different types of risk. You don't want to hop out there blind. So I had a conversation, with some of the artists that I work very closely with, and I want to just make this clear, to everyone watching. It's the difference between, I don't want you guys to get the notion and the idea and the concept that, oh, let's just go and just be best friends, with this artist, because it's not all about that. People don't necessarily want to be your friend because you're a nice guy or you're a nice girl. What I'm saying? It's also business at the end of the day. And what are the things that you're bringing to the table? Because people do, obviously this business is very small. For it's like college, and it's like high school. People talk, but at the end of the day, I was always, my dad was always instilled a hard work ethic. And at the end of the day, sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest person. It's definitely about your work. What are you putting out? What is going to stand and what is going to precede you? And so, it was at a point where I said, okay, now it's time to get a little uncomfortable. And I got the support of some key folks. And, no one knew back then, it was gonna, this pandemic was gonna happen. It was, that was an idea 3 years ago that Timberland and Swizz talked about, but who knew that it was going to come to fruition? So you never know what the future is, but what you can control is you can control how hard you work and how hard you go.
Facts. I love that. What are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered during your career growth, and how did you guys get through it?
I would say, when you're in this business, you're only as good as your last record. You're only as you can have an amazing career and then you can get cold, or you not be attached to a hit or something that is sexy at any given moment. And you have to realize that it is like high school and college. When you're at the cool table in the lunchroom, everybody wants to sit with you. When you're not at the cool table, they don't want to sit with you. And you always want to be at the cool table. And when you have a hit, you're at the cool table. And when you don't have a hit, you're not at the cool table. So that's really tough. You have to navigate how to deal with those situations. And I remembered when my first company, Loud Records, we had this amazing run. Nobody didn't take my call, and everybody wanted to have lunch. Everybody wanted to have dinner. And then we sold the company. It didn't end the way we wanted. And a month later, half of these people who wanted to be my best friend when I was the president of Loud Records, they didn't return my call, or they didn't want to have lunch. Now, they were never my friends.
Right.
Right? They were never my friends. There are people in business that you like, that you do business with. There's people in business with that you don't like, but you have to deal with them. And then there are people that you dislike. And then you find out sometimes some of the people in business are actually your friends. But it's hard until you go through that. You don't realize it. So that was really challenging, because we all have our peaks and valleys in our lives and in our careers. And in this business is unique in that regard, because it's a hit-driven business, and no matter what anybody tells you, nobody knows what a hit is. Some people have a better track record than others, but nobody knows, because if everybody knew, then every record that every record company put out would be a hit. But guess what? Our hit ratio is pretty terrible. The amount of records we put out versus the successful ones, it's a pretty terrible ratio. Not too many businesses could survive with this ratio. So you have to learn how to navigate those peaks and valleys. That was a hard lesson.
Definitely.
I guess the biggest lesson, if you don't believe in yourself, it's a wrap. Like, just going to Rich's statement, you have to be really clear about yourself and have a reality-based notion that it does go up and down if you plan on being in it for a long time. If you're in it to be hot, that's gonna be a hard time for you, because it's just impossible to stay, that peak hot after your peak. So, learning that the belief had to start with me was kind of that was hard, because I think it happened for me after I got fired from Sony. And when I got fired at the time that I was kind of like doing well as an A&R. Like, John Legend was doing well. I had signed him. Omarion had come out of B2K. I had done that record, and it was starting to look cool. And the company changed, like leadership changed, so that changed the whole company, right? So I just assumed, okay, I'm me. I'll go out here tomorrow and it'll be the same. We'll just figure it out. the next day I started hearing these rumbles of that I had fell off and it was a wrap. And if it weren't for the fact that I knew what my plans were and what my thoughts were, I could have believed that and became one of those people who was hot at that time. And you have to know that you have to work through this, because it's gonna be cold nights, it's gonna be cold days, it's gonna be cold seasons. but if you have a passion for it, and if you built for it, you got to work your way through it. But if you can build yourself up to take the down parts of this, it's one of the successes become that much more sweet, and you appreciate them more. Like, you become grateful to be able to do this, or whatever your particular profession is. Like, I'm just really aware that it starts with you.
I agree 1,000,000%. Like you said, it starts with the person, and that's all about your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and to me personally, finding other things. Like Rich said, like you realize, you get into the game at a certain point, and when you're up and when it's hot, you do think that these are friends, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and you start realizing, like, oh, shit, we were doing business together, and we were just doing a lot of business together, so we spent time together, and you really kind of see the realities through the challenges, and I'll definitely say for myself, one of the best things that I've done was just diversify, just my business, so that now that doesn't make me, so to say. Of course, it's a passion of mine, and it feels good. But now, if I take an L, or if I'm not invited to the cool table, the cool room, I'm not like crying about it at all. And I think that's really when you're in trouble, when you're in that position. You're depressed, and now you're in a slump. And when you believe that you're not hot, now it's a real thing, for real. So to your point, KP, right? We Aries, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, yo,
like
I might not be hot.
The first word in self-esteem is self.
For sure. Yeah.
I guess I had two instances where if we're being really honest, I guess you can use the word overconfident. If you're in a business, you need to know every part of the business and understand people's role in that business. And I assumed a role or understanding of a role and decided to bring an artist to the label that I thought should be signed for a friend, and made a big deal about it. And everybody came to see this artist, and he was terrible. And an executive, and I won't say the person's name, was like, know your role. You're a publicist, you've been in for a little while, but you're not an A&R. And I say that not because I don't understand music or know music, but I think that you sometimes go too fast, thinking that you can conquer everything all at once without doing your homework. So I just think research is really important. And I think as you think about the people on this chat and you garner relationships, get to know what they really do, understand their job, understand what they put into their position to get where they are. And don't get too, just don't go too fast. And I'm not saying that you might not find that artist overnight that takes you everywhere, but there's still a business once you sign that artist. There's still the idea that you have to keep that artist going. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but I'm just saying, make sure you understand that the music is a business and respect every part of it. That's my best way to say that mistake I made, I will never make again. Okay.
And just real quick, I'm just, good old fashioned at the end of the day. And, I think we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I think we should be doing those things twice as much than we speak. We should be watching as much, and listening, because obviously when you do those things, you're absorbing knowledge, and that goes to kind of what Phylicia was saying. This is a business, so know the facets, of the business. And before you, before you press go, make sure, you've been doing your studying. Also believe, if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That's just how it goes. So what you put in is what you get out. And nobody owes you anything. So. Yeah.
Definitely. Rich, I wanted to ask you, how did you decide to take your law degree and apply it to music?
By mere survival. I had when I came out of law school, I worked for a big corporate law firm because I had massive student loans to pay, and they were paying me a lot of money, and that was what's one of my only regrets. I don't have that many regrets, but that's one of my only regrets because I feel like I probably would have been a really good lawyer, but I went for the money and the security and I wanted to pay my loans off instead of doing something that I probably would have enjoyed more in the law, like work for the public defender or for the DA or a small law firm. But I went for the security. So because I hated it so much, that pushed me out of the law, and I realized, okay, I hate what I'm doing. I'm going to take this opportunity. And when I went into start Loud Records with my friend, we had no money, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I had no idea how business worked, which seems funny that I was a lawyer and I practiced law, but I had no actual practical business experience. I knew I was a professional student, basically. I had waited tables and I had done a lot of other jobs, but I never really had a clue as to how business worked. So when we started the company, we had no cash really to pay lawyers. So I was like, okay, well, I'm a lawyer. I could read a book. This book, All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. And if anybody is interested in the music business, stop right now and write that down and read that book. All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. Anyway, I read that book and it had every explanation of every provision of a record company, every facet of a record company, every facet of a record contract. And then I had a couple of guys that I met out in LA when I started the company that were lawyers, and I'd say, hey, can you give me a form for this or whatever? And I kind of figured it out by making mistakes, and I made a ton of mistakes. For instance, when we signed Wu-Tang, we signed them. I did the deal memo, which I should have gone to jail for malpractice, because I gave them more points than we got. So I didn't know what I was doing. So RCA Record, we were funded by RCA Records was funding us, and I think we were getting 15 points for a single, and I gave Wu-Tang Clan 18 points. So
that's tight.
we were losing 3 points every time we sold a record, but I had no idea. And then I realized, I don't know how long it took me to realize it, and I went and oh my God, how, and I went to the RCA guys and they were laughing at me because the record was so successful. They're like, don't worry about it, we'll fix it for you. I had no idea what I was doing. So I guess the answer to my question is, it was unplanned, but I learned out of pure necessity. And you make mistakes and you learn more, and hopefully, the mistakes aren't bigger than the mistakes that I made. But you just have to apply yourself the best that you can, and know you're going to make mistakes, and that's how you learn, and that's how you grow.
That's a great story, Rich.
Wu-Tang is for the kids.
That's a great story.
I was there for that too. That's another story.
Yeah.
Jason, you define yourself as a serial entrepreneur. How do you manage making all of your ideas come to life? And what advice would you give to others that are working on multiple projects at one time?
I would say first and foremost, I'll say to anyone, you have to kind of cut your teeth at something, so I wouldn't recommend people to try to juggle a million things without being successful with either of them yet, so I would definitely recommend gaining success and then growing. For music, for us, as we know, successful music is kind of like getting a passport. Now you get to explore and see so many different concentrations of business within our culture, for the most part. So for me, I think partnerships are key. Collaborative business, really identifying good partners, people that are in many ways smarter than me, right? You know what I'm saying? And how do I work with them?
Or somewhere.
I tell people, artists, executive, my outlook is, I want to be in business with the person who's going to make it with or without me, period. Yeah. Like, that's when I feel like I'm in business with the right person, right? Like, if it's an artist, if it's an executive, and if you need me, like, this is too much work for me right now. I can damn near do it by myself. I want to get a team that we can all come together and, and champion each other and inspire each other to win for real. So I'll say for me, it's definitely all about partnerships and collaborative business, you know.
Definitely. Courtney, what does the process look like when branding talent?
I mean, I first start with for what I do is it's very it's in the public eye. So it starts with and it's also, you know, every business kind of has a product, right? But our product happens to be people, you know, and people they talk, they have feelings, they have families, there's different layers to them. So the first thing that I do, and I'm also you know, in a business of service. You know, it's not about me. It's about this talent and the team around it. You know, if they win, then, you know, we win as a team. So first, I go and, you know, what is it that, you know, you're looking for? What are your goals? You know, because I can tell you, you know, all the things that I think are great. You know, but if it's not kind of in line of kind of what your thinking is and kind of what your vision is, you know, then I can be doing all those types of things in vain. But if I can kind of weave them together and help them, you know, shape their thoughts, you know, and bring in, because it's a tough thing to bring an idea or any type of ideation into actual, you know, reality. So it's about sitting down, finding out what their vision is for themselves. And I do believe that every great artist already has a vision for who they are. All these great artists that you see right now, from a Travis Scott, and Jason will tell you this, that's pretty much who he was the first day. And that's actually one of the first times that I met Jason was through a Travis Scott, and who you see him, and this was years ago, you know, but he had an idea of who he was as an artist. Now, obviously, you have a team to help cultivate that and kind of fine tune it and take it, you know, to these different avenues. But for me, you know, a big thing with artist development is sitting down with them. And if they already have an existing team, finding out what their outlook is and what their vision is, you know, and helping them map that out, because it's, you know, what the big picture is, but sometimes you have to set small goals to reach the big picture. So that's what it's about with me, setting small goals so that we make our mark to the big picture.
That's beautiful. I love it. KP, how did you go from writing music and producing to transitioning to a music label executive?
By just being open to the opportunities that were being presented, because luckily I was ignorant to what the music business was. I didn't know what the roles were. So as I was an artist first in a group called Parental Advisory, which is one of the first groups out of the Dungeon family to get signed. And during that period, we were kind of like the guinea pigs. So we got the first deal, you know, we traveled and we were like the first group to notice that you can, like, it's best to just be Southern if you're gonna be from the South. So in all these things that we were finding out in conversations that I was having with people like L.A. Reid and Pebbles, I found out that some of my thinking made sense to them in the executive side. And they basically offered me these opportunities to be, like, Pebbles was the first person to tell me that I should do A&R, because the questions that I asked were about the whole, and they weren't about just me and the two members of my group. They were about how this affected the Dungeon and how it affected the songs and the producers. And she was like, well, because you have an understanding that all these things matter, you may want to be in a position where you can help all of them. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of followed it. Like, so every time I did something that ended up being right, someone would tell me what that was, and I would just add that to my, like, you know, repertoire of things to do. And yeah, and that went from her telling me I should do it, LA, me bringing an artist into me, LA, because I had been on the road DJing. And LA was like, oh man, you sure you don't want to entertain this record company thing a little more? And I was in a group, so I said no, but I was still doing the job. And he said, look, you might as well take the check. And at that point I was like, oh, this is real. and that's what made me understand, oh, this can be a valuable service. Because at first I thought I was doing it as favors, because I thought everybody saw the same thing I saw. Like, this dude is dope, you don't see that? And basically, like, people helped me cultivate my gift to be a talent. Like, you know, it was identified, and then I respected the people who were talking to me. So I listened, and I did the work that, you know, they they told me about and the work that needed to get done. And then just being a person who wants to help, I end up learning a bunch of different jobs. That's all. And in that, just being inquisitive and honest to what I did and didn't know, it, like, I hate saying this, but it kind of just worked out because I was leading with my honest thoughts and my honest opinions, and doors were opening. So I tried to stay honest. That was always that's my work ethic. Just be honest.
Definitely. And Phylicia, I want to ask you about, I feel like you created a very strong brand with your Purple agency. What was the process in you launching your own company and just going for it? Because I really respect what you've established just in the publicity realm.
It was twofold. I think the starting point was 2008. I was at Universal, and my first client was Kwame, the producer. I met him at a party. He was like, "You're out all the time. You're always at the clubs. You're always in the mix. Why is that?" I'm like, "I guess I'm just nosy. I'm an only child. I don't know." But he's like, "Will you help me with publicity?" And I said, "Sure." So he became my first client. The second client I had was Swiss Beats under the Purple agency. And so at that point I was like, I'll just start working on producers because they're not necessarily artists, because I had to be careful about who I brought on. But it was Swiss, it was Kwame, then it was Grey Goose. There was a listening session. They used to have like a concert series back in the day. I'm not sure because, again, everyone here was not born yet. So I won't go there. But again, it started with my want to stay connected. And within a system, there's rules in a system. You know, that's just what it is. But I think Purple allowed me to break free from a certain structure that I think made me smarter, made me more valuable, and made me continue to take risks, like Courtney mentioned earlier. And then it became a situation where I wanted executives of color to have more opportunities. And so that's really what made it keep going, is that I think there's a certain training that you don't necessarily get. We didn't have an entertainment division or entertainment opportunities that much on the Spelman College campus. We didn't have an entertainment summit until 2 years ago. So I just felt like I wanted certain executives or young executives of color to have a little bit of training before they walked in those doors. And I think that's what it's remained. I don't run the company officially now, but it still goes because it's still ran by executives that I feel are being primed for the bigger picture. And so it was entrepreneurial for me just because I wanted to continue to be in the street. And I don't know if that makes sense, but there's something about being still connected to the street and still having a little bit of struggle in you that keeps you motivated and keeps you valuable. So that is the premise of Purple and why it is important to me. And I will always thank Purple for my development. It's made me a better executive. It's made me more aware. It's kept me hungry. And it's kept me, I think, fearless when it comes to how I look at my clients. That's the best way I can say it.
Okay. Definitely. And you're rocking purple. Look at that. Brandy, did you want to add any questions or take questions from?
Yes, I had a question. You guys have been extremely transparent for us today, and I really do appreciate it because as a student, it's so many times that you want to know information, you attend these panels, and then you don't really learn the meat of what you guys go through. So I appreciate you guys for being so transparent. One of the questions I had was, what are your sacrifices before COVID, but then just, you know, being in the music industry in your specific roles?
I think all of us would probably agree with time first, you know, and that's time with family, friends, fun. You know, in focusing on a goal, you kind of sometimes you have to forego the party sometimes and wait for the celebration.
That goes back to me saying that, you know, you have to be passionate about it, you know, because the amount of things that you miss out on, like I said, I'm sure everyone, that'll be the common denominator, right? Like everyone knows, like, man, you miss out on so many family functions, birthday parties, things that, you know, that you can't make up again, you know? So that's also why, for me personally, as I've grown in the business and been in the business longer, now my time is more important to me. Now who I do business with, who I get into business with, like I know the level of commitment that I'm giving of myself. So now I'm not going to give that up so easily. You know what I'm saying? Like I do have a family, I do have a kid, I do have, things that are important to me. So now it literally has to be worth my time for real, So that's my answer.
That was a Jedi answer.
Yeah, that was great. Okay, so with that being said, another thing about like being in like the college phase or stage of life is that you want to create these strategic relationships, but you want to do it organically. How do you guys create or strategically create beneficial business relationships while also staying organic, not sliding in DMs and being annoying, but how did you guys do it in college, but then also how do you do it now?
How about, this is simple, be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but I guarantee you the kindness will come back to you. And and the best example I can give you of that, when I was Loud Records, I don't know, it must have been 2 years into Loud Records. We were just starting to make a little bit of noise. I think Wu-Tang just came out. We had the Alcoholics. I mean, I don't know how, I hope there's some real hip hop fans here. But back in the prehistoric days of the 90s, when they used to have actual record stores, and because they had record stores, they had distribution branches all over the country. So in order to buy music, you had to go to the store, and the record company had to get the CDs or the cassettes from their manufacturing facility to the actual retailers. So we would go out like shoe salesmen and speak to the distribution centers, and it was kind of like you go out all over the country and you do these little, sales meetings, and you're talking to a room full of guys that look like Maytag repair salesmen. The last thing you would think is these people were like they were really our customers. We were selling music to the distributor, to the retailers who were selling to the consumers. Anyway, I'm out in the Detroit branch of Bertelsmann Music's distribution facility. And Bertelsmann Music was the company that owned RCA Records and Jive Records and Arista Records. So at the time, BMG, and they distributed Loud. So I'm out in Detroit doing my pitch, and some young guy comes up to me after I did my talk to the my sales thing, and he goes, "Hey, I heard you were a lawyer before you did this." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, I'm in law school. I'm taking the bar in New York. Do you have any advice?" And whatever. And I said, "Oh yeah." I gave him some advice. I said, "Well, when you get to New York, look me up. I'm happy to help you." So he calls me, and I give him an office space to be an intern. His name's Paul Rosenberg, and Paul Rosenberg was the guy who discovered Eminem and managed Eminem, and manages him to this day, and was the chairman of Def Jam. He asked me to become the GM a couple of years ago. He stepped down recently, but he was my intern. And then he discovered Eminem, and he was shopping Eminem while he was an intern for me. And I hadn't heard from Paul in many years. I went and did a bunch of other things in the music business. And about 3 years ago, he calls me out of the blue and he says, I'm going to take this job as chairman of Def Jam. I'd like you to be my number 2. So here I am. And I didn't, and that was because of an act of kindness, right? I mean, I did a lot of other things between being kind and here, but be kind, because that's how you form relationships with people. And relationships are everything in our business.
And you don't hear that word just enough in this day and age, you know what I'm saying, to be kind to people. And what a better message, to send out right now. So respect.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And just my last question. So I think we all can agree that the college demographic is extremely powerful. A lot of the demographic that music kind of goes after, just because we are, the consumers, and we're listening a lot. But specifically, what ways can we add value in the music industry or music business?
I think you guys do it. You know, when you're honest about the things you like, it gives us a clearer gauge at, you know, what we're doing when we're getting it right and when we're not. But you know, college, like you said, college in Atlanta is the reason why the Atlanta culture is the way it is, or the reason why it's so widespread. Because basically, if you think about in the early 90s, Freaknik broke Atlanta culture. Like people came down, and in that moment, it happened to be Outkast starting. So it's like by going back to your respective homes, spreading the word of what it is you found, you know, while you're away at college, that's our first viral. So it's just about being honest and communicating the things that matter, you know, and that helps everybody, because you guys are the people who are seeing it from the most honest place. You're fresh out of the house with your parents, but you're walking into the world, so you see it from a way that is still fresh. And you know, it's basically you guys' job to make the music business or whatever art or business or whatever it is you go into what you want it to be and what it's missing.
Yeah, it's also it's no rules in this business, you know. It's sort of like kind of what Rich was saying, like you don't know what a hit is going to be a hit, so you don't know that something is going to be. You just know what you like and what your friends like, you know. So be honest and be vocal about it, you know, because I also think that's a part of leadership too, you know, not you know, and a trendsetter, you know, not following what other people are doing. If you and your crew, if y'all rock with it, stand firm in it and rock with it. You know what I'm saying? And next thing you know, you look up, dang, everybody doing the same dance we doing now. Y'all wasn't doing this before, you know, but that's literally how it starts, you know. So just be honest, you know, about what makes you move. It's simple as that. I don't think it's some things you don't overthink. This ain't one to overthink. Either I like it or I don't. Either it's hot or it's not. Either it's fly or it's not. And that's it, you know. So
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys said personally.
All right, you guys, I would just want to thank the panelists first for giving us your time. We understand you guys work consistently. I think most of you all's jobs probably are about 24 hours. And so you're really taking time out of your precious day. Like Mr. Jason was saying, like you use your time to speak with HBCU students where you definitely didn't have to. So we are extremely grateful.
Yes, we do.
I would never say no to an HBCU situation ever in my life. If not for HBCUs, I would not be here. And to Courtney's point, I still wouldn't be connected to culture without HBCUs. I look at HBCU Buzz, Watch the Yard every single day. You guys are breaking music with the bands and everything. Like you guys are so important to what we do. So we honor the HBCU system.
I know y'all saw Beyonce's documentary. What was the whole thing based around? You know? So
yeah.
Shout out to Hampton.
There you go. Shout out to Hampton. Right.
Made it drive by.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the AUC, I wouldn't be myself either.
Shout out to the AUC.
Thank you all. Good to see you guys.
Likewise, man.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace.
Anytime.
Right, peace.
All right, so if everyone can go ahead and follow Culture Fusion Agency to stay connected. Please go ahead if you took any screenshots. If you want to just stay all around connected on the panels, use the hashtag Culture Fusion Masterclass or HBCU Masterclass to stay informed. Again, follow Culture Fusion Agency on Instagram to stay connected for the panels this week. Thanks for having me. Bye.